Don't scroll. The person you love finally did something they had been afraid to do for a very long time. They finally told their mother about you, but what happened next left them completely speechless. They had imagined this conversation hundreds of times in their mind. Sometimes it ended with happiness, sometimes with rejection, and sometimes with silence so painful that it haunted them for days. They kept asking themselves the same question over and over. What if she doesn't accept the person I love? That fear became so powerful that they delayed the conversation again and again. But today was different. Today, hiding was no longer possible. Something inside their heart kept telling them that the truth could no longer wait. If you're watching this right now, stay until the very end because every moment of this story reveals an emotional twist that no one saw coming, and the final word spoken in that house changed everything forever. Early that morning, they woke up with a strange feeling in their heart. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't fear alone. It was the feeling that life was standing at a crossroads. They looked at your picture one more time before putting their phone away. A gentle smile appeared on their face as they remembered every late-night conversation, every promise, every laugh, every moment when you stood beside them during difficult times. They knew one thing for certain. They didn't want a future without you. But before that future could begin, they needed the blessing of the woman who had always guided them through life. Throughout the day, they searched for the perfect opportunity to speak. Every time they walked toward their mother, the words disappeared. Their heartbeat grew faster. Their hands became cold. They wondered if they were making a mistake. What if she misunderstood? What if she believed this relationship would only bring pain? What if everything they had built with you collapsed because of one conversation? Hours passed until the evening finally arrived. The house became unusually quiet. Their mother was sitting near the window, watching the sunset paint the sky with soft shades of orange and gold. Without even turning around, she quietly said, "You've been trying to tell me something all day, haven't you?" Those words froze them completely. It felt as if she had already read every secret hidden inside their heart. They slowly sat beside her, took a deep breath, and whispered, "Mom, there's someone I love." Silence filled the room. Seconds felt like hours. Their heart pounded louder with every passing moment. They couldn't even look into her eyes. Then they continued speaking. They told her about your kindness, your honesty, your dreams, your strength, and the way you made ordinary days feel extraordinary. They spoke about how you believed in them when nobody else did. They shared how your words had healed wounds you never even knew existed. They admitted that meeting you had changed their life forever. Their mother listened without interrupting. She didn't smile. She didn't react. She simply watched them with calm eyes. That silence became unbearable. Doubt rushed into their heart. Maybe she disapproved. Maybe she wanted to protect them from getting hurt. Maybe this was the beginning of goodbye. Then something completely unexpected happened. A single tear slowly rolled down her cheek. They immediately became frightened. "Mom, are you okay?" they asked with a trembling voice. She reached for their hand, held it gently, and smiled through her tears. "I've been waiting for this day," she whispered. They looked at her with complete confusion. "You knew?" She nodded softly. A mother's heart notices everything. "I saw the happiness in your eyes long before you ever spoke their name. Every time your phone lit up, your face changed. Every time you came home after talking to them, you smiled without realizing it. I knew someone had entered your heart." Those words instantly shattered months of fear. The burden they had carried for so long suddenly disappeared. For the first time, they felt understood instead of judged. But their mother wasn't finished. She looked at them with unusual seriousness and quietly asked, "Tell me, do they truly make your heart feel peaceful?" Without hesitation they answered, "Yes, every single day." Her smile grew warmer than ever before. "Then don't let fear steal what God has placed in your life," she said gently. "Real love isn't the person who gives you butterflies for a few moments. Real love is the person who gives your soul peace even during life's biggest storms." Those words touched them so deeply that they couldn't stop crying. Every fear they had carried was replaced by hope. They finally believed that the future they dreamed about with you could become reality. But just as relief filled the room, their mother's expression suddenly changed. She stared at an old family photograph sitting on the shelf. Her smile slowly disappeared. After several long moments of silence, she quietly whispered something that made their hearts stop. "There's one thing about the person you love that I recognized the very first time I heard their name." They looked at her in complete shock. "What do you mean?" She closed her eyes for a moment, took a slow breath, and softly replied, "Because many years ago, before you ever met them, our lives crossed in a way neither of you could possibly imagine." They couldn't believe what they had just heard. For a few long seconds, they simply stared at their mother, hoping she would explain what she meant. Their heart was racing so fast that every beat felt louder than the silence filling the room. "Mom, how could our lives have crossed before we even met?" they asked with a trembling voice. She looked at the old photograph again, gently picked it up, and smiled with tears in her eyes. "Some stories begin long before the people living them ever realize it," she whispered. "Sometimes God starts writing a love story years before the two hearts finally meet." Those words left them speechless. Every question inside their mind grew stronger. They had expected advice, maybe even concern, but they had never imagined hearing something so mysterious. Their mother slowly opened an old wooden box she had kept hidden inside a cabinet for years. Dust covered the lid as if it had not been touched in a very long time. Carefully, she removed a faded photograph. The edges were worn, and the colors had almost disappeared with time. She handed it over without saying a word. As they looked closely, their entire body froze. Standing in the background of the picture was someone who looked exactly like you. It wasn't perfectly clear, but there was no denying the resemblance. The same eyes. The same smile. The same gentle expression. Their hands began to shake. This can't be possible, they whispered. Their mother nodded slowly. I knew you would react this way. She explained that many years ago, before they were even old enough to understand love, she had attended a community gathering with relatives and close family friends. It was an ordinary day that everyone eventually forgot, except for one small moment that had remained in her heart ever since. A little child had wandered away from the crowd, frightened and crying. Before anyone else noticed, another child walked over, held their hand, comforted them, and led them safely back to their family. That child, she said softly, was the person you love today. They felt as if the room had stopped spinning. It sounded impossible, yet something deep inside their heart told them it was true. Their mother smiled warmly. Even as a child, they had kindness in their heart. They didn't help because someone told them to. They helped because that's who they were. Suddenly, memories they had never paid attention to started returning. The first time they met you, they had felt strangely familiar, as though they had known you forever. The comfort between you had come too naturally to be explained. Conversations had flowed without effort. Silence had never felt awkward. Being together had always felt like coming home. Maybe that feeling hadn't been an accident after all. Their mother gently placed her hand on their shoulder. Do you know why I never stopped listening while you talked about them? She asked. They quietly shook their head. Because every story you told reminded me of that little child I met years ago. Kindness doesn't disappear with age. It grows. Tears filled their eyes. Again. Everything suddenly made sense. They realized why your heart had always felt different from anyone else's. Why your love had never felt forced. Why your presence had always brought peace instead of confusion. But before they could say another word, their mother took a deep breath and revealed something even more unexpected. There was another reason I wanted you to tell me about them, she admitted. A few weeks ago, someone came looking for our family. Their hearts skipped a beat. Who? They asked immediately. Her expression turned serious. An elderly woman. She paused before continuing. She asked me one question, a question I couldn't answer at the time. The silence became overwhelming. "What did she ask?" they whispered. Their mother looked directly into their eyes and slowly replied. "She asked if my child had finally found the person they were always meant to meet." The room fell completely silent. Neither of them knew who that mysterious woman was, or how she could possibly know anything about your relationship. But one thing had become painfully clear. This love story was much bigger than either of them had ever imagined, and the next truth waiting to be revealed would change everything once again. The mysterious woman's question echoed through their minds long after the conversation ended. Sleep became impossible that night. Every time they closed their eyes, they heard the same words again and again. "Has your child finally found the person they were always meant to meet?" It didn't sound like a guess. It sounded like certainty. They couldn't understand how a complete stranger could know something so deeply personal. The next morning, they sat beside their mother at the breakfast table, hoping she would remember another detail. "Mom, who was she?" they asked quietly. Their mother took a slow breath before answering. She looked to be around 70 years old. Her hair was completely silver, but her eyes were full of peace. She wasn't in a hurry. She smiled the entire time, as if she already knew the answer before asking the question. "Did she tell you her name?" they asked. Their mother gently shook her head. "No." Before leaving, she simply smiled and said, "When the time is right, they will understand why their hearts recognized each other so quickly." Those words sent chills through their entire body. It explained something they had never been able to describe. From the very first conversation with you, nothing had felt forced. There had been no pretending, no fear of being judged, no awkward silence. It felt as though two hearts had simply continued a conversation that had been waiting for years. They remembered the first time you smiled at them. It wasn't just beautiful, it felt familiar. They remembered the first time you laughed together. It wasn't the beginning of happiness, it felt like returning to it. Every memory suddenly carried a new meaning. Their mother watched them quietly before speaking again. "There is something else I never told you." They looked up immediately. The day after that woman visited, she left an envelope in our mailbox. Their heartbeat quickened. "You still have it?" Without saying a word, their mother walked to a small drawer and carefully removed an unopened cream-colored envelope. It looked old, but it had only one sentence written neatly across the front. "Open this only after the truth has been spoken." Their hands trembled as they looked at it. "I never opened it," their mother whispered. "I felt it wasn't meant for me." She gently placed the envelope into their hands. For several long moments, they couldn't move. Finally, they broke the seal. Inside was a single handwritten letter. It wasn't long, but every word felt heavier than the last. "If you are reading this, it began, then. You finally had the courage to speak your heart. Never allow fear to separate you from the one who brings peace to your soul. The greatest love stories are rarely easy at the beginning, because they are preparing two hearts for a lifetime instead of a season. Tears slowly rolled down their face as they continued reading. There will be moments when others will misunderstand your journey. There will be days when distance, doubt, and silence try to convince you to give up. Do not listen. Real love survives what temporary emotions cannot. Protect it with honesty, patience, and kindness. They could barely breathe. Every sentence felt as though it had been written specifically for them. But the final line changed everything. One day, the person you love will stand in this very house, not as a stranger, but as family. Silence filled the room. Their mother gently wiped away her tears. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. The future they had only dreamed about suddenly felt possible. For the first time, they believed that love was stronger than fear. But as they folded the letter and slipped it back into the envelope, something unexpected fell onto the floor. It wasn't another page. It was a small photograph hidden inside the envelope. They picked it up slowly, and their breath caught in their throat. The picture showed you, standing beside the same mysterious elderly woman, smiling together as if they had known each other for years. On the back of the photograph, only 7 handwritten words appeared: ask them who she really was. Their hands began to shake. One question now mattered more than anything else. Who was the woman who seemed to know your love story before either of you did? And would asking you finally reveal the truth, or uncover the photograph remained in their hands as they stared at the smiling faces frozen in time. Their heart pounded louder with every passing second. The mysterious woman was standing beside you with one hand resting gently on your shoulder, and the warmth in her eyes made it clear that she wasn't a stranger. She was someone who meant something important to you. They turned the picture over again, reading the same 7 words again and again. Ask them who she really was. There was only one way to find the answer. With trembling hands, they picked up their phone and sent you a simple message. Can we meet today? There's something I need to ask you. The reply came almost immediately. Of course. I'll be there. Those 4 words brought comfort, but they also made the mystery feel even closer. For the rest of the afternoon, they couldn't stop thinking about the photograph. Every possible explanation crossed their mind, yet none of them felt right. As the sun slowly began to set, they finally saw you walking toward the small park where you always met. The moment your eyes met theirs, you smiled the same gentle smile that had first captured their heart. But this time, they couldn't smile back. There were too many questions waiting for answers. You noticed the worry on their face immediately. "What's wrong?" you asked softly. Instead of speaking, they reached into their bag, removed the photograph, and handed it to you. The instant your eyes fell on the picture, your expression completely changed. The color slowly disappeared from your face. Your smile faded. Your hands began to shake. For several long moments, you couldn't say a single word. They watched every emotion pass across your face: surprise, sadness, disbelief, and finally deep love. Quietly, almost in a whisper, you said, "I never thought I'd see this picture again." Those words made their heart race even faster. "You know her?" they asked. Tears immediately filled your eyes. You nodded slowly before answering. "She wasn't just someone I knew, she was my grandmother." Silence surrounded both of you. Even the sounds of the park seemed to disappear. They looked at the photograph again, trying to understand how everything had become connected. You gently traced your grandmother's face with your finger before continuing. "Before she passed away, she always told me something that I never understood. She used to say, 'One day you'll meet someone whose heart will feel familiar before their name does. Don't let fear make you walk away from them.'" Their eyes widened. Those words sounded almost identical to the message inside the letter. You continued speaking through tears. "When I met you, I remembered her words. Immediately. I couldn't explain why, but being with you felt like returning home after being lost for years." They felt tears running down their own face now. Every strange coincidence suddenly seemed connected. The old photograph, the mysterious letter, the unexpected visit to their mother. None of it felt random anymore. Then you revealed something even more surprising. A week before my grandmother passed away, you whispered, she gave me a small wooden box and told me never to open it until I met the person she had been praying for. Their breath caught. "You still have it?" they asked. You nodded. "I've kept it safe all these years. I never knew why, until now." Without wasting another moment, the two of you hurried to your home. Your hands were shaking as you climbed into the attic and carefully pulled an old wooden box from the highest shelf. Dust covered every corner, proving it had remained untouched for years. Slowly, you placed it on the table. Neither of you spoke. The room felt heavy with anticipation. You looked into their eyes and quietly said, "Whatever is inside this box, I think it was always meant for both of us." With one deep breath, you lifted the lid. Inside was a neatly folded letter, an antique silver locket, and another photograph. You unfolded the letter first. Across the top, written in your grandmother's unmistakable handwriting, were the words that made both of your hearts stop at once. "If you are reading this together, then my prayer has finally been answered." A secret neither of you was prepared to face. They looked at each other in complete Silence before carefully unfolding the letter. Their hands were trembling so much that it took several moments just to hold the fragile paper steady. Every heartbeat seemed louder than the last. Slowly, you began reading the words your grandmother had written years before. My dear child, if this letter has finally been opened, then God has answered the prayer I whispered every single night before I went to sleep. The person sitting beside you is not in your life by accident. Treasure them. Protect them. Never let pride, fear, or the opinions of others separate two hearts that were brought together with love. Tears filled both of your eyes. It felt impossible that someone who was no longer there could understand your story so perfectly. The letter continued. You will face moments that test your patience. There will be misunderstandings, unexpected distance, and days when giving up feels easier than holding on. Remember this. Every lasting love is tested before it is strengthened. Don't mistake a difficult season for the end of your story. Every sentence felt as though it had been written for the exact moment you were living. Then your grandmother revealed something neither of you expected. Several years ago, I met a woman whose kindness reminded me of my own daughter. We spoke only for a short while, but before leaving I told her something strange. I said that one day our families would be connected by love. She smiled politely, probably believing they were simply comforting words. But deep inside my heart, I believed God had shown me something beautiful. They immediately remembered their mother's story. The woman she had met all those years ago, it had been your grandmother. Two strangers had crossed paths for only a few minutes, never realizing that years later their children would fall deeply in love. Neither of you could speak. The mystery that had surrounded your relationship was finally beginning to make sense. Then you noticed the antique silver locket resting quietly inside the wooden box. It looked ordinary from the outside. But engraved on the front were two simple words, always together. With great care, you opened it. Inside were two tiny photographs. One was a childhood picture of you. The other side was empty. Tucked behind the frame was another folded note. You carefully removed it and unfolded the tiny piece of paper. It read, "The second picture belongs to the one who brings peace to your soul. When you find them, place their photograph here, and never forget that love is built one faithful day at a time." Neither of you could hold back your tears anymore. It felt as though your grandmother had somehow prepared this gift years before either of you even knew each other existed. You looked into each other's eyes, overwhelmed by gratitude, hope, and love. Then your phone suddenly vibrated. The screen showed one new message from your mother. It simply said, "Come home. There's someone here asking for both of you." Confused, the two of you hurried back together. The moment you stepped inside the house, you noticed an elderly man sitting quietly in the living room. His eyes immediately filled with tears the moment he saw the silver locket in your hands. He slowly stood up, smiled gently, and whispered, "So she was right after all. Neither of you had ever seen him before. Your mother looked just as surprised." The old man took a slow breath before speaking again. "I made your grandmother one final promise before she left this world. She asked me to wait until the day the two hearts she prayed for finally found each other, and when that day came, I was to give you one last message from her." He carefully reached into the inside pocket of his coat and removed a small, sealed envelope that had never been opened. Across the front, written in the same familiar handwriting, were the words that instantly brought tears back to your eyes: "Open this only when you are both ready to hear the final truth." The room became completely silent as the elderly man carefully placed the sealed envelope on the table. No one reached for it immediately. It felt as though opening it would reveal the final piece of a story that had been unfolding for years. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. It belonged to your grandmother. The same gentle curves, the same careful strokes, the same warmth that filled every letter she had ever written. Your hands trembled as you looked at the person you loved. Without saying a word, they nodded. Together, you slowly broke the seal. Inside was one final letter and a small golden key tied with a faded blue ribbon. Before either of you could ask what the key was for, your eyes fell upon the first line of the letter. "My precious children, if this letter has reached your hands, then love has already done what fear could never stop. You found each other." Tears instantly filled the room. Every word felt alive. Every sentence carried the comforting voice of someone who had loved deeply and believed even more deeply. The letter continued, "People will tell you that love survives because two people never argue. They are wrong. Love survives because two people choose each other after every misunderstanding, every disappointment, every difficult season. Never chase perfection. Chase faithfulness. Protect each other's hearts, even when life becomes heavy." You squeezed each other's hands a little tighter. It was as though she knew exactly what every couple would one day face. Then came another unexpected revelation. The golden key inside this envelope belongs to a small wooden chest hidden inside my old house. I asked that it remain locked until the day you both stood together. Everything inside belongs to your future, not to the past." The elderly man smiled gently and said, "I still take care of that house. I've been waiting many years for this moment." Without wasting another minute, all of you traveled together to the quiet countryside where your grandmother had once lived. The little house stood exactly as she had left it. Time had faded the paint, but the warmth of the home remained untouched. The elderly man led you Upstairs to a small bedroom where an old wooden chest rested beneath the window. The lock had gathered dust over the years. Slowly, you placed the golden key into it. The lock clicked open with a soft sound that seemed to echo through the entire room. As the lid lifted, a beautiful collection of memories appeared. There were family photographs, handwritten journals, pressed flowers, old letters, and carefully wrapped gifts. But resting on the very top was a neatly folded document with both of your names written across it. You unfolded it together. It wasn't a legal document or a family record. It was something much more personal. The title simply read, "A Prayer for the Family You Will Build." The words underneath were enough to bring tears to everyone's eyes. Lord, if these two hearts ever find one another, fill their home with kindness instead of anger, with forgiveness instead of pride, with laughter instead of fear, and with peace that remains even when life becomes difficult. Let every generation after them remember that true love is never built in a single day. It is built through thousands of small acts of patience, sacrifice, honesty, and grace. Neither of you could stop crying. Every page that followed contained blessings, advice, and hopes written long before you had ever met. It was as though your grandmother had spent years preparing a gift for people she believed would one day become family. As you carefully placed everything back into the chest, you noticed one final envelope hidden underneath the journals. Unlike all the others, this one wasn't addressed to either of you. It was addressed to your mother. She looked surprised as she slowly opened it. Her eyes scanned the page for only a few seconds before tears streamed down her face. She looked at both of you, smiled through her tears, and quietly whispered, "Now I finally understand why she never stopped believing that one day, our families would become one." Then she folded the letter against her heart and softly added, "She left one final request, and it's something that will change both of your lives forever." To be continued. Your mother held the final letter close to her heart for several moments before she found the strength to speak. The room was completely silent. Every pair of eyes was fixed on her, waiting for the last piece of a story that had begun long before either of you had fallen in love. She slowly looked up, smiled through her tears, and said, "She asked me to read these words only after both of you had chosen each other with honest hearts." Taking a deep breath, she began reading aloud. "My dear friend, if this letter has reached you, then our prayers have become reality. Do not welcome this person into your family because of my words. Welcome them because you have seen the love they carry. Families are not built by blood alone. They are built by kindness, loyalty, forgiveness, and the courage to stand together when life becomes difficult. If these two hearts have found each other, give them your blessing without fear. Let your home become a place where love always feels safe." By the time she finished reading, tears were flowing down every face in the room. No one spoke because no words were enough. Years of mystery, fear, unanswered questions, and silent prayers had finally led to this single moment. Your mother slowly walked toward the two of you, gently took both of your hands, and placed them together. Smiling with complete peace in her heart, she said, "From the first moment I heard your name, I thought I was protecting my child by waiting. Now I understand that God had already been protecting both of you long before I even knew your story. You have my blessing." Those simple words lifted every burden that had been carried for so long. The fear of rejection disappeared forever. The uncertainty that had once filled your hearts was replaced by hope stronger than ever before. The elderly man quietly stepped forward and reached into his pocket one final time. He placed a small, beautifully carved wooden cross into your hands. "Your grandmother asked me to give you this only after your families accepted each other," he said. She carried it with her every day. She believed that love grows strongest when it is rooted in faith, patience, and compassion. Keep it somewhere in your home, not because it has magical power, but because it reminds you of the promises you make to each other. You both held the gift carefully, realizing that the greatest treasure your grandmother had left behind was never the letters, the photographs, or the keepsakes. It was the wisdom she had shared. She had taught you that true love is not measured by dramatic moments but by everyday choices, to forgive quickly, to speak honestly, to listen patiently, and to remain faithful even when life becomes challenging. Weeks later, both families gathered together for the first time. There was laughter instead of awkward silence, warm conversations instead of uncertainty, and joyful memories replacing old fears. As everyone shared a meal together, your mother quietly smiled and whispered, "I finally understand why." Her reaction changed everything. It wasn't because she knew the future. It was because she recognized genuine love when she saw it. As the evening came to an end, you both stepped outside beneath a sky filled with stars. Looking at each other, you remembered how close fear had come to keeping this beautiful future from ever happening. One honest conversation had changed everything. One mother's open heart had turned uncertainty into acceptance. One grandmother's faith had connected two families across many years. Before leaving, your mother wrapped both of you in a warm embrace and softly said, "Never stop choosing each other. That's the secret to every lasting love." Hand in hand, you walked forward together, not because every question had been answered, but because your hearts no longer needed certainty. They had something far greater: trust, love, and the blessing of the people who mattered most. And that was the moment you both realized that sometimes the happiest ending isn't the end of a story at all. It's simply the beginning of a lifetime written together, one day, one promise, and one act of love at a time. The end.